Howdy, everybody. Dr. Andy Woods here. This is Pastor's Point of View number 322. This is being released October the 4th, 2024. I'm the pastor teacher here at Sugarland Bible Church, and we're bringing to you today, once again, a prophecy update. Here's our preview slide where in this particular installment we're going to look at three things. Number one, Mark of the Beast technology. And you're going to be stunned by some of the things that are developing, particularly in Europe, that fit almost identically to what we see in the Bible concerning the Mark of the Beast. Global religion is in high swing as the Pope is now going around the world saying that all religions lead to God. We'll explain the prophetic significance of that. And then persecution is on the horizon for God's people internationally, domestically, technologically. Things going on with Governor Newsom in California, and so we'll bring you up to speed on that as well. So let's go ahead and start with our first major bullet point here, Mark of the Beast technology. And sort of as an entry point to this discussion, we like to draw people's attention to Revelation 13, 16 through 18. It says, "He causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man. His number is 666. It's kind of interesting to look at older commentators try to make any sense of that prediction. And typically what they do is they just allegorize it and symbolize it away because, there's no way such a thing could literally be fulfilled, where you receive some kind of mark and you're basically shut out of the economy if you don't comply. But the truth of the matter is the technology for this, we don't have to allegorize it or symbolize it away. The technology for this kind of thing is now in place. And it's just a matter of technology, evolving to the next level, where the day will come where we will see a complete fulfillment, of this prophecy. The interesting thing about the technological curve is it keeps speeding up because you're building on knowledge capital. And all you have to do is build on it another millimeter or so, and you're suddenly into this Mark of the Beast system. So with all of that being said, I want to draw your attention to this article from rarefoundation.com. And all of these articles that I'm sharing are very recent. This was dated September the 13th, 2024. The title of it is Blueprint for Control. Europe's digital vaccination card and the coming era of total surveillance. Now, I don't know what these folks at the Rare Foundation understand about Bible prophecy or what they don't understand, but they are describing something eerily similar to what we know as the Mark of the Beast given in Revelation 13. Notice what it says here. And keep in mind that this is arising out of Europe. In our last installment together, we talked a little bit about a Eurocentric New World Order. The Daniel 2 vision of feet, 10 toes, mixed with iron and clay, connected to the legs of iron. The legs of iron is Rome past. The feet, mixed with iron and clay, 10 toes, is Rome future. And so because the feet are connected to the legs, the future empire of the Antichrist that is prophesied in those 10 toes is going to arise out of the cultural inheritance, the eastern western divisions of ancient Rome, because the feet are connected to the legs of iron, representing the eastern and western divisions of ancient Rome. So the fact that this technology is now in place in Europe, in addition to the technology itself, the region from which this technology is emerging is prophetically significant as well. At any rate, notice this article. It says the EU's European Union, EU, digital vaccination card planned long before the pandemic is quietly creating a surveillance network that strips citizens of their rights, invades their privacy, and hands control over to unelected communist bodies like the World Health Organization, all while the public remains in the dark. I mean, the public is very much unaware of these developments. We're too focused on things like Taylor Swift just endorsed Kamala Harris for president. So our attention is being taken off of these global and technological terms. And notice the article indicates that this technology was in place long before the pandemic of 2020. So was the technology created for the pandemic, or was the pandemic created for the technology? Interesting thing to think about. But notice what the article says. In an alarming turn of events, the European Union has quietly begun the first steps towards a future where your freedom could depend on your vaccination status. The rollout of a digital vaccination card already underway in 5 EU countries signals a dangerous expansion of technocratic control over citizens' lives. This new initiative, led by a body known as the European Vaccination Board, European Vaccination Beyond COVID, I should say, is responsible for linking individuals' vaccination records to their personal identification numbers without their explicit consent. So they're marrying this technology with your vaccination status. What was once a matter of public health has now been transformed into an unprecedented invasion of privacy. According to lawyer, his last name is Terhorst, who recently spoke with Black Box, the gravity of this development is largely unnoticed. Quote, "There is no real discussion about this," she emphasized. What is unfolding isn't just a health initiative. It's a far-reaching power grab that could allow the UN to exert a level of control over its population that would have been inconceivable just a few years ago. Under this European vaccination card system, a citizen's ability to move freely across borders may soon be tied to their vaccination status. Isn't that what Revelation 13 says? You don't take this mark, you're shut out of the economy. Well, here it's talking about if you don't comply, your traveling privileges are taken away. The article says those who fail to comply could find themselves grounded and unable to travel. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the EU had already laid out a blueprint for a vaccination card or passport for all citizens. So don't think of this as some kind of reaction to COVID 2020. This technology was in place beforehand. The pandemic merely accelerated the deployment of this invasive infrastructure, pushing a plan long in the works. This shows that what is happening today was not a spontaneous public health decision, but a long-term plan put into action, only accelerated by the pandemic. In other words, the pandemic accelerated the technology which was already in place. This power shift sets a dangerous precedent where personal data far beyond vaccination records could be centralized and controlled by unelected authorities. America was built on the idea of no taxation without representation. All of these globalist power grabs that we have been talking about recently are talking about the transfer of total power into the hands of people that we don't vote for and don't share our value system. This is the problem of being dragged into globalism. It is a total violation of the unique American experiment in self-governance. This is why the globalists hate the United States Constitution, hate our Declaration of Independence, etc., because what they are proposing to do goes against American values. Even more troubling is the global reach of this system. So this is not just Europe, it's going to go worldwide. That's Daniel 2. The Antichrist empire arising out of the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome, but eventually, Daniel 7:23, subduing the entire planet. Even more troubling is the global outreach of this system. The World Health Organization has eagerly adopted the EU's technological framework, turning the European digital COVID certificate into a global standard. Now, the repetition of the word global in this article is their verbiage, not mine. I believe in all of that, but I'm giving you their verbiage. The vaccination card is no longer a regional issue. It's becoming a global tool of control. This expansion means that the technology behind the vaccination certificate is designed to be falsifiable and impossible to evade, locking individuals into a global surveillance network. You're stuck in the system and you can't get out. And if you won't play ball, you can't travel. This is not about health. That's such a great point, folks. This is not about health. Health is being used as an excuse to bring in the true agenda, which is global control. This is not about health. It's about creating a global system of oversight where unelected bodies like the World Health Organization hold immense power over individuals. The global network of control is already in place, and the public is losing its ability to resist. And eventually, so many conveniences are taken away if you won't play ball and opt into the system that the public is losing the ability to stand up to it anymore. The article says this means that in future health crises, polycrisis, multiple crises, crisis that can be manufactured perhaps. This means that in future crises, European ministers will have the power to impose vaccination mandates without public consent. Worse yet, the next step involves transferring sovereignty to unelected bodies. This poses serious questions about democratic oversight and the dangers of centralizing control in the global institution that operates outside of national borders. The problem is this erases national borders and puts power in the hands of people who don't share our value system because they're socialist or communist, that you don't vote for, that are corrupted with a sin nature just like the rest of the world. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is all predicate for global tyranny of the last days. I mean, this is the kind of system that Nimrod himself was trying to construct in Genesis 11 on the plains of Shinar, now coming into existence electronically over the face of the entire world. The technology is here to do this. Initially used for health purposes, this system could easily expand to include or encompass financial transactions or even social behavior, creating a vast network of surveillance and control over individual lives. Hey, why stop at health when you can expand it into controlling people financially, controlling people's social conventions? I mean, isn't that what Revelation 13 is predicting? The article says this is no longer about safeguarding health. It's about determining who can participate in society and how. That's what God said would happen. People would not be able to buy or sell unless they opt into this system. So I'm not particularly arguing that this is the mark of the beast because we don't have the beast yet. The restrainer is still here. But once the beast shows up after the restrainer is removed via the rapture of the church, it's almost like he just turns on the ignition switch of a car that's already been built. All he does is flip on, and this system already in place then goes into full globalist control of everything people do related to finance, related to health, related to vax certification, whatever the issue is. And you're deprived of participating in society if you don't comply. So we are living in a time period where it is no longer needed to allegorize away these great prophecies of the Bible. We can very easily see how they will be literally fulfilled. The scenario that the Bible has given us for the end of the age right now is more credible than I've ever seen it before. Now, I'm not a date setter or the son of a date setter, but we are approaching very, very fast as members of the human race the events of the 7-year tribulation period. So with all of that being said from this article from Rare, let me draw your attention to something related to Starbucks. Now, I don't know if this is Starbucks as a whole. I don't think it is, but you're starting to find this more related to individual Starbucks establishments. Signs like this, we're going cashless. From October 1st, 2024, we will only be accepting card, contactless, and Starbucks rewards payments. Please ask our team for further details. You know, the trajectory into cashless is all part of this. As long as I'm doing my transactions with cash, my buying patterns are not digitized. But once I move away from cash and I'm doing electronic transactions electronically, now there's a paper trail on me. And the powers that be know my personality profile. What kind of churches I go to, what kind of books I read, what my income is, what are my likes, what are my preferences, what are my tastes. And so if I happen to step outside of, by posting something online, for example, that's outside of the narrative that the powers that be are trying to protect at any given point in time, they can run a profile on me and shut me out of the system. Something they cannot do as long as I'm trafficking or doing my transactions in cash. So part of this end time system is a cashless society. That's what gives those that want surveillance the type of knowledge that they want about us and the ability to control us. That's what Revelation 13, 16 through 18 is predicting. A cashless society. And so I find it very interesting that all of these establishments are saying, hey, we don't operate in cash anymore. In fact, I recently took a trip from Houston to Seattle, going through, in the process, a couple of airports. I could not believe the number of signs I was seeing all over those airports indicating that these different stores that you pass as you're walking to and from your flight, we don't accept cash anymore. I remember a few years back I noticed it as you're on the plane, and they would come by and say, would you like to buy this or buy that as a snack? Would you like to buy coffee? And they were very clear that we don't accept cash. Now, that's a few years back. That trend has been in place for a long time. I guess what's sort of new to me is seeing all of the airport stores, not all of them necessarily, but many of them, no longer accepting cash. In fact, a lot of these places you go to in these airports, you don't even talk to a person behind the counter anymore. You just push in a few buttons and order what you want, pay for it electronically, through credit cards, debit cards, etc., right then and there. And so if you sort of want to see where the world is being pushed, take a trip through an airport, go to some of these amusement parks like Disney, etc. They've jettisoned cash a long time ago. And so I bring all of this to your attention in this prophecy update. That the technology that Revelation 13 verses 16 through 18 anticipates is there's no need to allegorize those passages. The technology is here, and our world is moving towards a God-ordained end that God saw fit to warn us about in His Word in the case of the book of Revelation 2,000 years ago. Now, with that being said, let's move away from Mark of the Beast technology to global religion. Notice Revelation 17, verse 15. He said to me, the waters where the harlot sits. So we've got two things here, harlot and waters. Harlot in the Bible is typically a symbol for false religion. Israel, when she veered away from God, book of Hosea, book of Jeremiah, books of Ezekiel chapter 16, Ezekiel chapter 23. God frequently called his people harlots. James 4:4, you adulterous people. So harlotry in the Bible typically is a reference to non-biblical false religion, a form of spirituality which denies the power of the gospel. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 5. The waters are defined right here as the world. It says the waters where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. You track those four nouns through the book of Revelation, and it always refers to the universal scope of the human race. In fact, those four nouns are used in Revelation 5, verse 9 to describe those for whom Christ died. So this prophecy here is talking about a religious system influencing planet Earth. And this one world religion, false religion, is just as important as the political and economic angles of the New World Order. The New World Order can't come into existence unless it has the three-legged stool. There has to be a political angle, an economic angle, and a religious angle. In fact, when you study the Tower of Babel, you'll see all three. They were building a city. That's politics. They were coming together to meet their own needs. That's economics. They were worshiping the mother-child cult. That's the religious side of it. And so Nimrod, as he was building this New World Order, a system of economics, politics, and religion that excludes God, was bringing all three legs of the stool together. You can't just analyze the New World Order from the economic angle, the technological angle, or the political angle. You have to analyze it also from the spiritual angle, because the Bible is very clear that one of the things that will buttress the New World Order is a one-world religion. Now here's what's going on in the area of one-world religion. The Pope recently has done more to advance the cause of one-world religion than any other time I can think of. The Pope is the vicar of Christ on the earth, according to Roman Catholic theology. And he is putting a happy face, a spiritual face, on this idea that all roads lead to God. In fact, the Pope recently has been so aggressive related to this that I guess my candidate for the false prophet would be the Pope. Do I know that for sure? No, I don't. But he would be an ideal candidate because he will worship on behalf of the beast or the Antichrist. And this is all just very recent news. Notice this article from the Christian Post, September 15th, 2024. It says, during a 3-day visit to Singapore, Pope Francis declared that all religions are a path to God, sparking backlash among religious leaders in the United States. The statement was made at an inter-religious meeting with young people at a Catholic junior college shortly before his departure back to Rome. Departing from his prepared remarks, Francis spoke off the cuff, stating that different religions are like different languages to reach God. If you start to fight, my religion is more important than yours, mine is true and yours isn't, where will that lead us? He asked. There's only one God, and each of us has a language to arrive at God. Some are Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Christian, and they are different paths to God. Reacting to the pontiff's comments, Bishop Joseph Strickland, who oversaw the Roman Catholic Diocese of Tyler, Texas, until his dismissal from the Vatican last year, said in a post on X, quote, "Please pray for Pope Francis to clearly state that Jesus Christ is the only way. To deny this is to deny him. If we deny Christ, he will deny us, and he cannot deny himself." Francis, referring to the universal nature of God, claimed, since God is God, then we are all children of God. In Singapore, Catholics constitute about 3.5% of the population, with Christians at 19%, Buddhists at 31%, Muslims at 15%, and significant Hindu and Sikh minorities. Francis also encouraged young people to engage in and sustain interfaith dialogue. Father Calvin Robinson, who recently moved from England to lead a church in Western Michigan, also rebuked the Pope's statement on X. This is a counter-scriptural statement from Pope Francis. The scriptures teach us the opposite. The gate to heaven is narrow. Robinson added, in Christ's words, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but through me." Francis previously faced criticism and accusations of heresy on social media back in May, proclaiming the human heart is fundamentally good during a 60 Minutes interview. When asked by the interview Nora O'Donnell what gives him hope about the world, the Pope responded with everything, citing acts of goodness by people as proof of humanity's inherent goodness. "You see the tragedies, but you also see many beautiful things," he said. "You see heroic mothers, heroic men who have hopes and dreams, women who look to the future. That gives me a lot of hope. People want to live, people forge ahead, and people are fundamentally good. We are all fundamentally good. Yes, there are some rogues and sinners, but the heart itself is good." Many commentators on X criticized Francis for his remarks, with some accusing him of failing to grasp the basic teaching of the gospel. Amen to that. Others quoted portions of Scripture that teach that God alone is good and that humanity has a sinful nature. Some X users noted that Francis's comments appeared to be an example of Pelagianism, a 5th century heresy that denied original sin and taught the essential goodness of humanity. During his 2022 trip to Kazakhstan, he made similar statements. Bishop Schneider, another frequent critic of the Pope, had then commented on the risk of creating a, quote, supermarket of religions, close quote. So here's sort of what the Pope has said. Every religion is a way to God. These are direct quotes from the Pope, what he said recently. Sort of a comparison would be they're sort of like different languages in order to arrive at God. That's another quote. Here's another one. There is only one God, and each of us has a language, so to speak, in order to arrive at God. Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Christians, they're all different paths. Understand? So he's saying this in a country with a lot of different religions to young people who were gathered at this sort of collegial affair to interact with the Pope. And then on the 60 Minutes interview, he said, yes, there are some rogues and sinners, but the heart itself is good. So what is happening from Pope Francis, the vicar of Christ on the earth, the representative of Christ on planet Earth? Essentially what he's doing is he is spreading the false religion of the last days, which completely and totally goes against the pages of God's Word. He is denying the biblical doctrine of depravity, that we're all sinners by nature. Something you have to understand, or there's no sense in becoming a Christian. I mean, if we're all good, why did Jesus come into the world to save us? Well, maybe because we're not all good. Maybe because all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, which is what the scripture in Romans 3, verse 23 says. And beyond that, he's saying you don't have to go to God through Jesus. You can go to God any path you want. Now, that is the one world religion being put into existence through a high-ranking spiritual figure to cooperate with the New World Order that they're bringing into existence simultaneously. Just a few pictures of the Pope at work here. I've got 4 of them. Here it says, Pope Francis, quote, all religions are a path to reach God. Pope Francis told young people in Singapore on Friday that all religions are paths to God, an affirmation that seems to run counter to the Christian belief in Jesus Christ as the sole Savior of humanity. Here's another. All religions are a path to reach God. There is only one God, and our religions are languages, paths to reach God. Some are Sikh, some are Muslim, some are Hindu, some are Christian, but they are all different paths. Here's another one. Pope Francis to children in Singapore, quote, all religions are paths to reach God. They are to make a comparison like different languages, different dialects to get there. But God is God for everyone. If you start to fight saying my religion is more important than yours, mine is true and yours isn't, where will that lead us? There is only one God, and each of us has a language to arrive at God. Some are Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Christians. They are different ways to God. And then one more. Pope Francis to children in Singapore, all religions are paths to reach God. They are to make a comparison like different languages, different dialects to get there. But God is God for everyone. If you start to fight and say my religion is more important than yours, and the quote goes on, fortunately, Ali Beth Stuckey correctly says here, this is not the gospel. The gospel is centered on the reality of Jesus. God made flesh is the only way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through him, quoting John 14, verse 6. Everyone believes what the Pope is saying here, including the Pope himself. Let me say that again. If anyone believes what the Pope is saying here, including the Pope himself, they are not Christian. She's got it, of course, exactly right. The Bible is very clear that you have to come to God the Father through God the Son, or you can't come. They've all quoted John 14, verse 6 to demonstrate that. Let me quote Acts 4 and verse 12. Peter speaking, and there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven which has been given by men, by which we must, notice that, this is essential, we must be saved. Look, folks, if every path is a pathway to God, then just go to the end of the book of Galatians, chapter 2, verse 21, where Paul makes the point that if salvation and righteousness can be gained through another source, like obedience to the law, circumcision or whatever, then Christ died needlessly. There is no reason for Christ to have come into the world to die that agonizing death in our place, if after all people can get to God the Father without the sacrifice of God the Son. Saying that there are many paths to God, not only is it blasphemous, not only is it anti-scriptural, but it devalues the death of Jesus Christ. Essentially what you're saying is, Jesus, appreciate the crown of thorns on the head, appreciate the spear that went into your side, appreciate the fact that the nails were hammered into your hands and feet, appreciate the fact that you were thirsty. I appreciate the fact that you were actually bearing the wrath of a holy God in our place through that transaction. I appreciate all that, but I really don't need it. Well, if you don't need it, then why did Christ do it? There's no need for him to do it. So you cheapen and devalue what Jesus did by going around saying this. And so this is what he's saying here is completely and totally outrageous. Yet, this is a sign of the end times. Because a religion that encompasses all people, Christian or not, will subdue the earth in the end. And here you have one of the top spokesmen for Christendom, someone who arguably could be the false prophet, going around and propagating all of this stuff at this particular hour in history when all these other prophecies that we've been studying are coming together in tandem. And so that's why keeping your eye on global religion and its development is another key stage-setting sign for the end of the age. This takes us to the final category that we're going to take a look at in this particular installment of Pastor's Point of View, and this has to do with persecution. I mean, nobody likes to talk about persecution, let alone me. But the truth is, the powers that be will shed the blood of God's people in the end of the age scenario. Notice Revelation 17, verse 6, followed by verse 15. John writes in the book of Revelation, I saw the woman, now remember who the woman is, it's the harlot, the false religion of the last days. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered greatly. And he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. This false religion persecutes God's people. The people of God, their blood is shed by this false religion. And the influence of this persecution extends throughout the whole earth to peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Now, why is this harlot persecuting God's people in the last days? The reason relates to the fact that God's people are saying Jesus is the only way, whereas the Pope and other acolytes and advocates of the false religion are saying there are many ways to God. So religion, false religion, always persecutes the true people of God. That's a principle that goes all the way back to Cain and Abel in Genesis chapter 4, where Abel came God's way through blood sacrifice. Cain did not. Abel's sacrifice is accepted, Cain's is rejected, so Cain, filled with wrath and jealousy, rises up and murders his brothers. It was the religious crowd that murdered Jesus Christ, the Pharisees, that turned Christ over to Rome for execution. So as this false religion grows, expect a simultaneous and corresponding form of persecution and attack against the people of God. And this type of persecution is breaking out, first of all, at the international level, through sometimes things that are very simple, like athletics. Notice this particular article from the New York Post, September 20th, 2024. It says Olympics judo star Majdov, if I'm pronouncing that right, is banned for 5 months after making a sign of the cross at the Paris Games. Boy, this guy did the unspeakable. I mean, he actually made a sign of the cross. And for that, he's kicked out of his sport for a period of 5 months. Serbian judo world champion, last name is Majdov, vowed not to apologize after he was hit with a 5-month ban for making a sign of the cross before he competed at the Paris Olympics. Majdov was accused of violating International Judo Federation's religious code for having shown a clear religious sign when he entered the field play and was barred from participating in all tournaments, camps, and preparations. Majdov said, "The Lord has given me everything, both for me personally and for my career. He's number one for me, and I'm proud of that, and that will not change under any circumstances. Glory to him, and thanks for everything." I mean, here's a guy that is very good at his craft, and he wants to give glory to the Lord. He does it through a public sign, and he's kicked out of his sport for 5 months. Majdov said, "God gave me a great career, 7 European and 3 world medals. When I started, I dreamed of winning at least 1 big medal and thus succeeding in my life and the life of my family, who sacrificed everything for my career. He gave us a lot more and even borrowed too much so that I would bow my head in front of them when it came to either or," close quote. Majdov's show of faith came one day after the Paris Olympics faced intense backlash over its opening ceremony, which featured a drag show version of the Last Supper. The segment featured 17 performers, including 3 familiar drag race France competitors, behind a long table resembling Leonardo da Vinci's famous painting of Jesus Christ and his disciples sharing a meal. Do you remember how outrageous that was when the Americans participated in the Olympic Games and made a big deal of this, I don't know what to call this Last Supper portrait, which was obviously a portrait of the Last Supper. It's obvious. And yet they were maligning the Last Supper. They were maligning Jesus. Remember the pale horse in the Olympic Games. What was it in Paris? Olympic horse is a very significant prophetically. It's one of the seal judgments described in Revelation 6, making its debut and running about in the opening ceremony. So the crowd that put together these symbols tearing down Christianity, that kind of thing is fine in these international games. No problem whatsoever. But you got an athlete that wants to glorify God and honor God by making a sign of the cross. Hey, we gotta ban him for 5 months. Now you might be saying this is just athletics. You're reading too much into it. No, this is an indicator of where the global culture is headed. You're fine to tear down Christianity in this global religious culture. You're fine to talk the spiritual talk all you want, but the moment you begin to articulate biblical truth of any kind, expect them to lower the hammer on you. And that's what's happening according to this September 20th article from the New York Post related to this Olympic judo star. The whole thing is repulsive. The whole thing is disgusting. but it's happening now in real time. Let me take you to something else demonstrating the global crackdown against God's people that's now manifesting itself. This is an article from RT.com. And it says, top German MP threatens X and Telegram with bans. Berlin must tackle online radicalization and further tighten control over social media, the legislator said. Here's the article. Germany must act to stop the dissemination of extremist content online and block major social media platforms if necessary, a senior MP from the country's Green Party has said. One of the biggest problems of extremism is online radicalization, this individual stated, adding that dissemination of anti-constitutional content on the internet must be stopped. Those social media platforms that refuse to abide by German laws and remove extremist content must be blocked altogether, he argued, specifically singling out X, formerly Twitter, among the potential targets. Instead, the government should use them for its own benefit, namely deploying digital agents to infiltrate private groups on Telegram to identify potential criminals, close quote. Listen to that language, potential criminals. In other words, you haven't committed a crime yet, but we know you are a criminal because of your intent. So we're going to criminalize you, take away any free speech rights you have on social media because of a crime you might commit rather than a crime you've actually committed. Punishing people for ideas, punishing people for their thoughts. It goes on and it says earlier this week, Brazil slapped a blanket ban on X. We covered a lot of these issues, by the way, in PPOV 319. The platform had failed to comply with local political misinformation and hate speech laws by refusing to delete certain offending messages. In late August, the Russian tech entrepreneur and founder of Telegram, Pavel Durov, was arrested in Paris. The businessman now faces a multitude of charges related to complicity in drug trafficking, money laundering, fraud, and various forms of child abuse stemming from the actions of Telegram users. While Durov was ultimately released on bail, he was ordered to stay in France while the investigation is ongoing. So what we're going to do is we're going to take someone that is an entrepreneur and CEO of Telegram, X, and because someone is using those platforms in a way that goes outside the government narrative, we're going to take the entrepreneur, and because someone happens to be using the tool that it created in a way that goes against the government narrative, we're going to take the man that invented the tool and that owns the tool, and we're going to jail them because they're not censoring the way we in Germany think they should censor. And if you post any content that goes outside the government narrative, we're going to call you a drug trafficker, a money launderer, a child abuser. We're going to say that you are disseminating misinformation, disinformation, you're disseminating hate speech, you're contributing to radicalization of potential criminals. All for what? Because people post their own perspectives and their own views on these platforms that happens to go outside the narrative of the New World Order. That is the type of insanity that is now descending upon our world. Again, these things are originating in Europe. The New World Order is going to emerge from the cultural inheritance of ancient Rome and eventually grow worldwide, and we're seeing these things develop. Let me give you this other international article This deals with this type of crackdown happening in Australia. This is dated September the 12th, 2024 from vision.org. It's entitled Most Repressive Speech Laws in Australia. The article says the state Labor government has voted along partisan lines to pass the Respect at Work and Other Matters Amendment Bill 2024, which the ACL describes as the most repressive speech laws in any Australian jurisdiction. ACL Queensland Director Rob Norman said Queensland Labor has pulled a death blanket over freedom of speech and freedom of religion with today's, September 10th, late-night passage of the Respect at Work bill. The unelected bureaucrats of the Queensland Human Rights Commission will now have the powers to deem any speech that offends, humiliates, or intimidates any of a growing list of persons with protected attributes as harassment or hate speech. In effect, the commission will decide whether or not public debate is respectful. Mr. Norman underlined, this new legislation means that religious people who refer to holy texts or religious teachings that challenge the sexual orientation or gender identity are open to costly action at the hands of the Queensland Human Rights Commission. Aha, now we see where everything's moving. Don't post Romans chapter 1 online, or you're in trouble legally because of this very vague, overbroad statute and law that has now been passed in Australia. The article goes on and it says, we have entered a new dystopian era where frivolous and expensive claims at the hands of hostile activists now hangs over the 2.5 million Queenslanders who identify as Christian. May God help us, he exclaimed. Speaking of may God help us, you'll notice this particular picture that I got from Concerned Citizen. This is a person in Australia who's in a position of authority lamenting this legislation and others like it. This is a very recent September the 13th picture. But it says here, quoting him, today is a dark day and one that does not bode well for the nation. The government's so-called combating misinformation bill marks the beginning of the end for free speech and democracy in Australia. Across the entire Western world, tyrannical governments are trying to censor their populations, not to protect their citizens, but to protect the state, and politicians being exposed fully for their tyrannical crimes that they are committing. So we're not going to be on the side of the individual people exercising free speech, like perhaps criticizing the transgender movement through a citation from Romans chapter 1. We're not going to be on their side. We're going to be on the side of the tyrants who are trying to repress this free speech. Now, we see this going on in Germany. We see this going on in Europe. We see this going on in Australia. This is an international, worldwide movement that has taken the principles of free speech and simply cast them aside. This is the beginning, I believe, of the type of persecution spoken of in the book of Revelation, chapter 17, verse 6. The pretext for that type of persecution legally is already being put into place. Legally, it's already being put into effect. This truly is a dark day. Because countries, Western-style democracies, Australia and Germany, that used to have some kind of understanding of free speech, are just discarding free speech. And so if you post something that goes against the government narrative, like in the issue of climate change, for example. Suddenly, you're responsible for disinformation, misinformation, hate, trying to sort of push would-be criminals over the edge. You're different than a child. You're no different than a child abuser, a drug trafficker, and so we're going to take your content down, and then we're going to arrest the inventor and owner of the tool that you used, like Telegram or X, to put up, your own free speech and free ideas. I think we said in PPOV 319 that would be like arresting the CEO of AT&T because a mobster, used the phone for criminal purposes. That's what's happening when they're taking the founder and owner of Telegram, X, and putting them under arrest and incarceration, throwing the full power of the law against them. This is nothing short of global tyranny that would manifest itself in the last days. Now, it's very tempting as an American to say, well, that's over there. I'm glad it's not happening here. Well, think again. Notice this particular article from the Federalist.com, September the 18th, 2024. It says, with new California AI law, Newsom, the governor of California, mounts chilling assault on free speech. California's far-left governor celebrated Constitution Day. In other words, he signed this deliberately on Constitution Day because he's mocking what the Constitution is really about. California's far-left governor celebrated Constitution Day with a series of new laws to crack down on free speech articulated via artificially generated content. On Tuesday, Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom officially outlawed the creation and distribution of images and videos created with artificial intelligence known as deep fakes. The meme ban applies 120 days before an election and 60 days after. The law, formerly known as Assembly Bill 2839, allows people depicted in AI-generated memes and videos to obtain a preliminary injunction in court that stops the meme's distribution. Safeguarding integrity of elections is essential to democracy, and it's critical that we ensure AI is not deployed to undermine the public's trust through disinformation, especially in today's fraught political climate, Newsom says. So you have a meme that promotes a particular political perspective, maybe catching Kamala Harris and some of her flip-flops. Well, if you do that just before an election or just after an election, we have the tools via artificial intelligence to take that down. So we just took away your political free speech. And to do so, we're going to throw a nice category at you. We're just going to say you are trafficking in misinformation or disinformation. So what is happening is political opinions that used to be normal in America prior to an election are now being called misinformation and disinformation, and we have the AI tools to censor your latest meme. Notice what tech CEO Elon Musk said. He announced in July that he would relocate the headquarters for two of his companies from California to Texas. He amplified a campaign ad that Newsom characterized as the impetus for his decision to sign the anti-free speech law. It's hard to be a free speech platform in a state that wants to ban free speech, Musk wrote in another post on X. Krista Lee Bogman, partner at the Dillon Law Group in California, who litigates First Amendment issues, told the Federalist that Assembly Bill 2839, that Newsom just signed into law, was problematic for broadening the scope of subject to lawsuits. Whatever harms might be caused by deepfakes, they are still at the core of expressive content, Bogman told the Federalist. The First Amendment protects expressive content unless it falls under certain narrow categories. Close quote. You should be able to express yourself politically. And as long as you're not inciting people to imminent violence, your perspective should be allowed to be aired on social media. Gavin Newsom, with the stroke of a pen, just took that away. Under California's new regulations for artificial content, however, even positive memes and parody videos can be the subject of a lawsuit. Assembly Bill 2839, Bogman said, is deeply at odds with the way it is drafted with existing defamation law. We're entering into a time period that's at odds with the Constitution, and it's at odds with how we've traditionally understood defamation law. Of course, if someone slanders or libels, you can be sued for that. But what about just puffery, opinion, perspective, exaggeration? All of that is now taken away electronically. And there's Gavin Newsom signing that into law. In fact, we have a picture of him sitting on his throne there, signing this into law. This comes from End Wokeness. It says, breaking, Governor Gavin Newsom signs AB 2655, forcing social media sites to ban election-related memes created with artificial intelligence. I'm telling you, folks, I look at that picture of him sitting in that chair, pulling out this law from his jacket pocket, signing it to the setting that he's chosen to do this, a bunch of, clapping seals. California is a long way away from the California I grew up in. I mean, this Gavin Newsom is so completely and totally different than the governors I grew up in when I lived for the first 30 years of my life in California. We had a governor there who was outstanding named Governor Duke Majan, an outstanding Republican governor. I came of age under him as my governor in the state of California. And what do we have here? We have this tin pot tyrant, this tin pot dictator who sits on his throne and at the stroke of a pen in front of a bunch of clapping seals signs laws that goes against our traditional understanding of our Constitution and goes directly against our traditional understanding of defamation law. I don't recognize California today. It is not the state that I grew up in. And what they're doing in California, they want to shift to the whole country. In fact, let's scratch that. They want to shift it to the whole world. As California goes, so goes the nation, as many have said. Speaking of which, notice Bill Gates here. This is from Liz Churchill. It says, Bill Gates to use AI, artificial intelligence, to silence those who oppose his vaccine. Notice what Bill Gates says, quote, we should have free speech, but if you're inciting violence or if you're causing people not to take vaccines, where are those boundaries that even the U.S. should have rules? Question mark, close quote. So Bill Gates says free speech is great unless you're posting things that go against public health, unless you're inciting violence, unless you're ginning up hate. Well, those are some pretty subjective categories, Mr. Gates. What does it mean to gin up hate? What does it mean to damage public health? What does it mean to incite violence? Can you define those categories for me so I can know if I'm crossing the line or not? Bill Gates says, we will decide. I will decide. I will decide if something is hateful. I will decide if something goes against public health. I will decide if something is radicalizing potential criminals. So what he's just done is he set himself up as judge, jury, executioner, arbiter of what can be posted online and what can't. And then he has the audacity to say, you know what, I believe in free speech. You don't believe in free speech, Bill. What you believe in is free speech for me, but not for thee. You believe in any idea that doesn't contradict your pagan worldview is essentially what you're saying here. And, here is one of the most powerful people in the world just coming out and making a statement like that. As this mentality spreads, free speech, is all but dead. Let me take you to this article here concerning Kamala Harris, who's considering racist hate-monger Keith Ellison for Attorney General. Hey, Kamala, if you win the next election, who's going to be your Attorney General? She's already hinted that it very well could be Keith Ellison. The article from Front Page Mag, Daniel Greenfield, September the 8th, is entitled, Kamala Harris Considers Racist Hate-Monger Keith Ellison for Attorney General. Current reports are that Kamala's people have told Muslim groups, because Keith Ellison is a Muslim, and he's a spousal abuser. Current reports are that Kamala Harris's people have told Muslim groups that Keith Ellison would be on the short list for Attorney General of the United States. That's this guy, the article says. Back in 1989, Keith Ellison was already being condemned for anti-Semitism. The Minnesota Daily Opinion editor Michael Olenek described Ellison's writings as a genuine threat to the long-term safety and well-being of the Jewish people, a threat that history dictates must not be ignored. In a more recent comment, Olenek compared Ellison to David Duke. In 1997, 2 years later, he was defending the Nation of Islam's anti-Semitism and praising Minister Farrakhan as a tireless servant of the black people. In 1998, Ellison ran for office as affiliated with the Nation of Islam on a platform of, among other things, having Nation of Islam thugs patrol neighborhoods. He complained about a propaganda war being waged against Minister Louis Farrakhan, an anti-Semite, by the way, who called white people blue-eyed devils. These are the people that he's in cahoots with. In 2000, 5 years later, Ellison is still referring to Minister Farrakhan and spewing NOI conspiracy theories. As recently as the Minnesota Attorney General debate in 2018, Ellison claimed that Louis Farrakhan was a person speaking to the issues of the African American civil rights. At the time, I thought he had something to offer, Ellison says of Louis Farrakhan. You guys want Kamala Harris to win, and she appoints him as the next Attorney General? This guy is Islamic. He is an anti-Semite. He is a criminal, in my opinion, proven spousal abuser, batterer. What do you think a guy like this is going to do with the full power of the Attorney General's office of the United States of America? And we're going to sit back and be so arrogant and comfortable as to say we'll never be persecuted here in the United States? I mean, persecution is about to move into very high drive should Kamala Harris win in this election cycle. One other fast thing, and with this we're finished, is the condition of our law schools that are creating the future attorney generals, politicians, senators, members of the House of Representatives, governors in our nation. What are those law schools like exactly? Notice this article from WWorldNetDaily.com, September 6, 2024. It says, leftist law school goes anti-Christian with a new course about the age of Trump. A top public university law school is offering a class this fall that aims to explore the U.S. political shift towards authoritarian Christian nationalism in the age of Trump, according to an email obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. The University of Colorado Boulder's law school class is entitled Statutory Interpretation and is offered to second-year law students and will hinge on topics of relevance in the current election season, including former President Donald Trump's legal battles and the Supreme Court's supposed legitimacy crisis. Professor Paul Campos told students in an email obtained by Daily Caller News Foundation, DCNF. Campos noted in the email that the course should be more aptly named The Crisis of the American Legal System in the Age of Trump. It isn't surprising that the school would offer a course, but it is disappointing, a student alerted the DCNF of the course. Said, mentioning multiple instances of similar bias experienced at the school. The student requested anonymity to avoid retaliation from the school. If you're a conservative student in law school these days, you can't complain about something like this publicly because your grades will suffer. And in law school, grades are everything. Determining your first job coming out of law school. The student requesting anonymity says, when I learned constitutional law, I learned it from a professor at this particular law school that openly called for rewriting of the Constitution. Students in the same class complained about the fact that the non-college educated voters, I guess that's the MAGA voters, in rural America could affect elections at all, the student told DCNF. Professors at the university, he said, tout the likes of Ginsburg and Sotomayor, reading their opinions as though it were the gospel. I have yet to hear critiques on the liberal justices, but I often hear critiques on the likes of Justice Gorsuch, who actually once taught at this particular law school. Course topics will include abortion and the current legitimacy crisis of the Supreme Court, and will discuss how they create a fundamental threat to social and political and national stability, according to the email. The course will also examine the extent to which the American legal and political systems are being pushed towards some variety of authoritarian Christianist nationalism with potentially fascistic overtones and the perils of presidentialism. Some of the required readings of the course include several books on fascism, as well as Coates' 2017 Atlantic article, The First White President, which attributes the election of Trump and other white presidents to the bloody heirloom of whiteness. It's absurd that a public university in this age would push the narrative that there is a secret cabal being pushed by members of a religion to overthrow the government, the students said. I've heard professors and students alike joke and insult that Christianity is backwards. It's no wonder that someone is now teaching a course teaching this fear as a course. Campos, an ardent Trump critic, wrote in 2016 that the former president is a total moron who represents every horrible personality trait and instinct that fueled the Reagan Revolution. Sounds like a nice, unbiased professor teaching this particular anti-Christian, anti-Trump, pro-critical race theory course. When President Trump was hospitalized briefly with COVID-19 in 2020, Campos wrote in a blog post that the president's death would be a blessed event, saying, "I just want him to die," according to Campus Reform. Now, I don't have a slide on this, but I've seen statistics recently where a substantial percentage in the Democratic Party wished that the assassin bullets had taken Trump out. That is sick. In fact, it comes to my mind the number is 25%, according to a Rasmussen poll. Rasmussen is historically pretty reliable. You mean to tell me a quarter of the Democratic Party population and voters wants Trump dead? A guy that wants Trump dead is teaching an anti-Christian, anti-Trump course at a mainstream, supposedly, law school. The University of Colorado settled a lawsuit in February with Campos, which he received a six-figure payout, according to the Denver Post. Campos sued the university after he received a low annual review score. Gee, I wonder why. Which he attributed to discrimination. No surprise there. Quote, "The university is creating activists soon to be sheathed in the power of law," the student warned. Let me say that again, because that's why I'm bringing this article to your attention. The student reporting all of this anonymously said the university is creating activists soon to be sheathed in the power of the law. In other words, if you think the current generation of politicians is bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. Look at the absolute garbage and trash and anti-Christian hysteria, anti-Trump hysteria that is soon to be coming out of these law schools, taught by these activists who aren't real legal scholars. These are people who are actually activists masquerading as legal scholars. That's who's teaching these courses. Those activists are being taught to despise conservatives, hatred in other words, and view them as lessers through courses like this one. I bring this to your attention under persecution because this is the state now of American law schools. Notice this quote from Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln said, "The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of governance in the next." So in this particular pastor's point of view, we've covered the subjects of Mark of the Beast technology, global religion, and ensuing persecution. Of course, believe it or not, in all of this we have some good news. Notice Titus 2:13. It says, "Looking for the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ." As the 7-year tribulation period is approaching, the rapture, which precedes the tribulation period, is approaching even faster. And so we exhort people to be placing their personal faith and trust, even as I am speaking, into the God-man Jesus Christ, so they can participate in this soon coming rapture and be exempted when the Lord pours out his wrath during the 7-year tribulation period on all of this evil. Just a few infomercials. Go to the App Store and download the Andy Woods Ministries free app to get all of our content. Pastor's Point of View is also available in podcast format. Go to wherever it is you get your podcasts and type in Andy Woods Ministries into the search engine and enjoy Pastor's Point of View in podcast format. Go to the Andy Woods Ministries website to get all of our recent content including a conspicuous way on the homepage to sign up for our show notes that I read from. Every time we post a Pastor's Point of View show, these show notes will show up in your inbox. I want to remind you of Chafer Theological Seminary that I'm the president of. If you're considering seminary training, go to chafer.edu. Keep in mind that we have our journal back in circulation called Pneumaticos. A recent journal is available at that QR code, and a new journal will be coming out very, very soon. Cutting edge academic articles on dispensationalism, the rapture, and other topics. Go to the Sugarland Bible Church website and sign up for the SLBC Prophecy Conference banquet Friday night at nearby Sugar Creek Country Club, February the 21st. All-day conference on Saturday. Stick around on Sunday where our conference presenters will be teaching during our regular services here at Sugarland Bible Church. This goes February 21st through 23rd of 2025. And we have as speakers at this conference Bill Federer, Olivier Milnick, Dr. Randall Price, and myself. And as was put up just a moment ago on the screen, I want to make you aware of the Worldview Weekend Conference. Go to www.tvstore.com and enjoy this conference November 1st through the 3rd at Lake of the Ozarks. I'm going to be speaking there along with, as you can see from the picture, several other great speakers addressing cutting-edge worldview issues. And then I want to remind you of the pre-trib study group meeting in Dallas, Texas, December 9th through the 11th, 2024, dealing with some cutting-edge issues related to end times interpretation. I'm going to have the opportunity to present on the apostasia that's in 2 Thessalonians 2, verse 3. You'll look at the lineup and you'll see a bunch of amazing topics being presented as well. Went a little long today, folks. I apologize for that, but a lot of this information that we're bringing to you is breaking in real time. We want to bring those to your attention on these prophecy updates. Thanks for watching Pastor's Point of View, sharing Pastor's Point of View, praying for Pastor's Point of View. We look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. God bless you.